Tucked away deep inside your skull, you've got 12 pairs of cranial nerves that are basically running the show for some of your body's most important functions. Today, we're going to dive into one of the most versatile and, honestly, underappreciated of them all, the glossopharyngeal nerve. It's a real unsung hero, and we're about to see why. I mean, just think about that for a second. What single nerve could possibly handle tasting, swallowing, and keeping an eye on your blood pressure all at the same time? It really sounds like three completely different systems, right? But nope, it's all managed by this one amazing nerve we're talking about today. And here it is, the star of our show, cranial nerve number 9, the glossopharyngeal nerve. The name itself is actually a perfect little cheat sheet for what it does. Glosso, that's for the tongue, and pharynx, that's your throat. And it's called a mixed nerve because it's basically a two-way street. It sends motor commands out to make stuff happen, and it brings sensory info back to the brain. Pretty cool, right? All right, so let's start with its jobs in the throat. This is where it really plays two distinct roles. It's a mover, making muscles work, and it's a sentry, feeling and reporting on what's going on. And this slide really breaks down that dual role perfectly. On the motor side of things, it controls this one very specific muscle that's job is to help lift your throat up when you swallow. Super important. At the exact same time, on the sensory side, it's the nerve that's feeling everything in that same area. Touch, pain, heat, cold, all from the back of your tongue and your upper throat. The mover and the feeler all rolled into one. And this ability to feel things, specifically touch, right there at the back of the throat, well, that sensation is the starting pistol for a reflex that every single one of us is very, very familiar with. Any guesses? Yep, the gag reflex. It's actually a brilliant example of teamwork in your nervous system. Our hero, cranial nerve 9, is the lookout. It's the one that detects the touch and sends a panic signal to the brainstem saying, hey, something's back here that shouldn't be. But it doesn't actually do the gagging part. The brainstem immediately passes that message to its partner, cranial nerve 10, the vagus nerve, which then carries out the motor command to contract the throat. It's a perfect handoff. Okay, let's move on from the gag reflex to something, well, a lot more pleasant. This nerve is also a master when it comes to eating. It manages both flavor and flow, what you taste and the very first step of digestion. Now, you might think taste is handled by just one nerve, but your tongue is actually split into zones. The front 2/3, that's another nerve's territory. But that back third, way in the back of your throat, that's all the glossopharyngeal nerve. It's especially good at picking up bitter and sour tastes, which is probably a defense mechanism, to help you detect something spoiled or toxic before you swallow it. So beyond just tasting, this nerve also has the critical job of, well, making your mouth water. It sends signals to the parotid gland, which is your biggest salivary gland, basically telling it, okay, time to get to work, let's start producing saliva. And you've definitely experienced this. You smell a pizza or bread baking in the oven, and your mouth immediately starts to water. That's your brain getting that smell, realizing food is probably on the way, and sending a signal down the glossopharyngeal nerve to get the parotid gland fired up and ready for action. It's a totally automatic and pretty awesome response. All right, so we've got swallowing, feeling, tasting, and saliva. That's a lot already. But now we get to what I think is the most incredible, most vital job this nerve has. It's a secret 24/7 monitoring system that is literally keeping you alive. I mean, really, have you ever stopped to think about how that works? You stand up too fast and your body just fixes your blood pressure so you don't pass out. You hold your breath for too long and your body screams at you to breathe. That isn't magic. It's an incredibly sophisticated biological system, and our nerve is sitting right at the heart of it. So here's how it works. Tucked away right where the main artery in your neck splits, there's this tiny little group of sensors called the carotid body. You can think of it like a little chemical analysis lab, constantly taking samples of your blood to check the oxygen and carbon dioxide levels. It's your body's own internal emissions monitor. And right next to that, you have the carotid sinus. Now, this one isn't checking for chemicals. It's a pressure sensor. It's like a tiny barometer for your blood vessels. It physically feels how much your artery walls are stretching with every single heartbeat, and from that, it gets a perfect real-time reading of your blood pressure. Okay, so you've got these two amazing sensors collecting all this critical data. But how does that data get to headquarters? That's the job of the glossopharyngeal nerve. It acts like a dedicated fiber optic cable, streaming all that information about oxygen, CO2, and blood pressure straight to the brainstem so it can make instant, life-saving adjustments.
It's this incredible, silent process happening every second of every day.
So when you put it all together like this, you can really see what a multi-tool this nerve is. We're talking about everything from the conscious act of swallowing to the completely unconscious, automatic monitoring of your blood pressure. It's basically the Swiss Army knife of your cranial nerves. So what happens when this incredible jack-of-all-trades nerve gets damaged or stops working right? Well, as you can probably guess, the symptoms are tied directly to all those jobs we just talked about. And it's pretty logical, right? If the nerve that helps you swallow is impaired, you're going to have trouble swallowing. If the part that senses bitter and sour tastes is offline, you won't be able to taste them. And of course, if the sensor for the gag reflex isn't working, then the reflex itself will be gone on that side. Because those functions are so specific, it's actually pretty straightforward for a doctor to test this nerve. They can ask a patient to swallow, maybe do a little taste test on the back of the tongue, or check for sensation. But there's one test in particular that's very closely linked to this nerve's health. And that brings us right back to where we started, the famous gag reflex. It's way more than just an uncomfortable feeling. For a clinician, it's an incredibly useful diagnostic tool. The reason this test is so efficient is because it's a 2-for-1 deal. When a doctor triggers a gag reflex, they're checking 2 nerves at once. A good, strong reflex confirms that the sensor, our guy, cranial nerve 9, is working, and that the motor responder, cranial nerve 10, is also doing its job. If the reflex is absent, it tells them there's a problem somewhere along that pathway. It's really incredible to think that this whole complex system, with all these different functions we just covered, is only 1/12 of the entire cranial nerve story. It just makes you wonder, what other amazing secret jobs are the other 11 pairs managing inside your body right now without you having to think about it for even a second?